And good afternoon, producer Susan. It is Christmas Eve, and how are you doing? Are you home? Producer Susan, can you hear me?
Yes, I am. How are
Oh,
you doing on this Christmas Eve?
you
Yeah, I
froze
can
up.
hear you. Can you
You
hear me?
froze up there for a minute. Your picture is frozen. Oh, it says in my internet connection is unstable.
Must be my fabulous internet connection.
I don't know why that happened. If it happens again, we may have to stop and restart. But anyway, it's Christmas Eve. We have a whole bunch to talk about. Anyway, for all of you who are with me, you'll probably be listening to this on Christmas Day or the day after. So it's the situation with Jerzee Joe. We're recording this on Christmas Eve. We're going to post it on Christmas Day. It's news and perspective you won't hear on TV. And we have a whole bunch of things to share with you that I guarantee you didn't hear in the evening news. And we have a whole bunch of stories that either you didn't hear at all or you only heard one side. And the focus of today's show is going to be the bias in the media. But before we get there, let's start with our quote of the week from economist Thomas Sowell on how success in this country has gone from something to be admired to something that has become the reason uh, for people to hate somebody. In our stupidest thing I've heard all week, we'll tell you what object the press is blaming for an act of terror, not a person, an object. And again, this is the media bias. They're not blaming the person, they're blaming the object he used to kill people. We all know about how Luigi Mangione last week. We talked about how people were getting Luigi Mangione tattoos on their arms and necks to show their support for the killer of the United Healthcare CEO. Well,
Ridiculous.
this week we have another even
Ridiculous.
more vile and disgusting way people are showing their support. In our science minute, we actually have two items to tell you about. One is we're going to tell you why the lab notes of one Nobel Prize science winner, award winner, have to be kept in a lead-lined box. And the second one is why you should never reheat food in a plastic container in your microwave oven. Hell, I've done it hundreds of times, but it's a very bad thing to do. And we'll tell you why you shouldn't reheat food in a plastic container in your microwave. We'll tell you what the network news
Mhm.
stations didn't initially tell you about the identity of a man who was arrested for killing a woman on a New York City subway by setting her on fire as she slept on Monday. Again, horrific crime. He set her on fire and watched her burn to death. And we're going to tell you what the network news stations knew about him but didn't report that night. We're going to tell you another horrific
Absolutely
story,
heinous crime.
heinous crime. And then we're going to tell you about another heinous crime. I'm sorry to bring you these heinous stories on Christmas, but we're going to tell you about another horrific story about the sexual abuse of two young adopted children by their gay parents, and why the media and how the media, not why the media, but how the media chose not to cover that story. We'll tell you how network news reporting has influenced the perception of people with regards to how frequently they believe unarmed black men are shot and killed by police officers, and the disparities are stunning when you look at the perception versus reality. We'll also tell you about the number of people in Congress over the age of 70 and how that's increased over the past 40 years. And it's staggering the number of our elected representatives in the House of Representatives and the Senate who are over 70. You probably never guessed the number, but it's a huge number and it's grown dramatically. And finally, our taxpayer relief shot this week comes to us from Upper Darby, Pennsylvania, where a young thug armed with a fake gun tries to rob a victim who had a real gun. How do you think that one turned out?
Yeah.
All
Real
right.
guns always win.
Yeah, the fake gun rarely wins. All right. Here's our quote by economist Thomas Sowell. There has now been created a world in which the success of others is now a grievance instead of an example to be emulated. If you go on, a lot of the website, a lot of the Facebook sites, being liberal, Americans for that, they despise Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, Mark Zuckerberg, Bill Gates. They hate them with a passion. Michael Dell, who started a computer business in his college dorm room. Bill Gates, started Microsoft with a couple of his college buddies, and now they vilify these people instead of, saying, good for him. My goal is to try to emulate them. So apparently being successful now is a reason to be vilified not to be emulated. So I don't know. Any thoughts on how? And by the way, and I believe the press is to blame for that, because they've had a lot to do with,
Oh, absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah.
So so apparently you can't be a successful, very successful businessman today with even the United Healthcare CEO. He's vilified anyway. So that's again the influence of the press on people's perceptions. There was a time when people used to look up to, wow, look at him. He, like Sam Walton. He started Walmart. Sam
Yeah.
Walton started out with just a little hardware store and grew it into what today is a multi-billion dollar empire. Sam Walton was admired, not anymore. If you were the next Sam Walton, trust me, you would be vilified by the press, and it's
Hmm.
just become the thing to hate rich people. All right,
Yeah.
stupidest thing. I think I'm going to try to keep tonight since it's Christmas Eve, and I'm going to try to keep it short. So anyway, I'm going to just blow through these. Stupidest thing all week. Now we've heard reports here where the press has done the same thing where they blame the gun, like where an AR-15 was used to kill 26 school kids, or 26 school kids were killed by that's actually the first. 26 school children were killed by an AR-15, not by an evil person or a crazy person with a gun. A AR-15 killed the people. They blame the gun. Well, I don't know
Yeah.
if you heard last Friday night, there was a street market, a Christmas market in Germany, a street festival in Germany.
Yeah.
And
Hmm.
well, a person, and I'll tell you who his background, intentionally drove his rented car into the crowd at high speed, killing five, seriously injuring 200 others, many of whom may not survive. So rather than say, and here's how the headline of this Associated Press story. A car drove into a crowd of people in Germany, killing five. They didn't say not a
A
driver.
car.
A car. They didn't say a driver drove a car into a crowd of people. They said a car drove into a crowd of people. Well,
Was it a self-driving car?
yeah, unless it was a self-driving Tesla, no, a car did not drive itself into a crowd of people. It was a Saudi national drove his rented car into a crowd of people. Why do you think they didn't open with the factual statement, a Saudi national drove his rented car into a crowd of people, killing five? Why do you think they said a car drove into a crowd
They
of
want to get, they want headlines. They
headlines?
want
And
headlines.
I think they want to not highlight the fact that it was a Saudi national who did this as an act of terror. I mean, maybe you can think of another reason, but I think they wanted to downplay the fact that this was a Saudi national who did this as a terrorist act. Um,
I don't know why they'd want to downplay. I mean, the facts are the facts.
the facts are the fact, but they again, if I was writing this story, I would have said a Saudi national drove a rented car into a crowd of people, killing five, right?
Hmm.
But not
Yeah.
no. They said a car drove into a crowd of people, killing five. No, the car didn't drive itself into a crowd of people. Uh, so no, that's just the first, or maybe the second. We've got more to go. Now, last week we talked. We told you how people are showing their admiration for Luigi Mangione, getting tattoos on their necks and arms of Luigi Mangione. Producer Susan, I think I told
I just don't understand why they are putting this fight up.
right, and I just shared this with you this morning that there's what is circulating now are big posters of Luigi Mangione dressed as Jesus with a glowing heart in his chest. He's in a white robe and a halo around his head, holding up his hand, his right hand, the way Jesus did. When Jesus was blessing people, he's got his one hand over his heart and the other hand in
This is such sacrilege, especially on Christmas. It is the celebration of the birth of baby Jesus.
right. And they,
And the news reporters that are comparing him to Superman when he was being let out of the Blair County courthouse to the plane to go to be extradited to New York,
yep.
they were comparing him to
Right.
Superman.
I know this. And by the way, in his arraignment hearing in New York City this morning, the back of the courtroom was filled with young women who waited for hours online to get into his hearing. It's
I
just,
don't get it.
I'm shaking my
I
head.
don't get
I think it's
it.
sick, and I just want everybody to know that this is what's going on. People are circulating posters of him, appeared made to appear like Jesus. So that's how sick a certain portion of our
Mhm.
societies become. All right, you want to move on to our science minute? Producer Susan, you still there?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So
Yeah.
if I said Polish-born, two-time Nobel Award science winner, who do you think I'm talking about?
Polish. I'm not
Polish-born.
sure.
Madame Curie. Curie was her married name. She was Polish by birth. She married a Frenchman.
Madame Curie. She invented it's
Discovered.
not plutonium, uranium. Discovered
Radium.
uranium.
Radium, no, radium.
Radium.
And it killed her. And it killed her. She
Hmm.
died from radiation poisoning.
Hmm.
And she died 90 years ago. And of course, she died in 1934. But to this day, her lab notes are still being kept in a lead-lined box. You know
Yeah.
why?
They're contaminated with they're
Con
radioactive.
Contaminated with radium dust. Her lab notes are contaminated with radium dust. And again, they're a historical, treasure. Her lab notes, but people who handle them have to get in a full radiation suit. So there's your little science minute. Madame Curie's lab notes. And she's a two-time Nobel
Hmm.
Award Science Award winner. Died in 1934. Yet to this day, her lab notes are still being kept in a lead-lined box. Now, on a different topic, have you ever heated food in a microwave in a plastic container?
Hmm.
How many times do you think you've done that in the past
Yeah,
year?
I admit I'm guilty of.
Okay.
Oh, I probably do it weekly.
All right. Well, I saw something from a food scientist, and I don't want to play the clip, but she said you should never reheat food in a plastic container in your microwave. And the
Mhm.
reason being, you've heard of nasty chemicals in plastics like BPA. You've heard of
Yeah,
BPA.
they break down when they're heat, and that's another reason why you're not supposed to keep water bottles in your car too.
Right. If you have so by the way, a lot of plastic like water bottle manufacturers will advertise the fact that their water bottles are quote BPA free. Well, BPA is just one
Mhm.
of several carcinogenic chemicals in plastic, and
Yeah.
when you heat them, BPA and other carcinogenic chemicals are released out of the plastic into the food. So, folks, I know it's convenient. Take it out of the fridge and put it in the microwave, but don't put it on a ceramic plate or put it in a porcelain dish. Do
Or,
not.
I mean, I have a lot of glass. I have a lot of glass storage containers, which is really what you should be using.
Right. But again, I know it's inconvenient. You dirty another dish. But
Mhm.
folks, if you continue to heat food in a plastic container in the microwave, you will be ingesting carcinogenic substances. So,
The same is true of the styrofoam takeout containers too. You're not supposed to put the styrofoam containers in the microwave either.
yep. So again, your life, your choice, but I'm just telling you, you're taking a health risk if you heat your
Mhm.
food in plastic in a microwave. So again, your health, your life, do what you want, but if you want to minimize or reduce your chance of getting cancer, don't do it. All right. Let's move on to another horrific story, and it's not about the story, it's about how the story was reported. I assume everybody heard that on Monday morning in New York City, a person set fire to a woman who was asleep on a subway train in New York City, and
Horrible.
her clothing caught fire and she burned to death. Now, at 2:30 in the afternoon, the New York Post, leading newspaper in New York City, reported that he was a migrant from Guatemala. All right. Now, and by it turns out, by the way, he was an illegal migrant from Guatemala because he'd been here previously and had been deported in 2018. So at 2:30 in the afternoon, the New York Post knew that this guy was a native of Guatemala and he'd been arrested. Well, I watched the 6 o'clock news, and you know how they identify, how migrant from Guatemala was reported on the 6 o'clock news by both CBS, NBC, and ABC? You want to guess?
How,
Person of interest.
uh, I mean, uh,
So migrant from Guatemala became person of interest on the network news. So my question is, why did the network news Monday night not see fit to share with the viewing public the fact that this guy, it was obviously well known. The New York Post had this information at 2 in the afternoon. Why did they not include the fact that he was a migrant from Guatemala on the 6 o'clock news. Now, by the next morning, after this had been plastered everywhere, they finally relented and began referring to him as a migrant from Guatemala. But my question is, why try to conceal that obviously well-known fact on the 6 o'clock news the day it happened? Uh, can you guess any reason?
I don't know. It was my understanding that he was here. It was my understanding he was here illegally and he came here. I don't remember if it was 2018 or 2019 he was here illegally and he had actually been deported
Yes, he
and
was
got back into the country again, a second time illegally.
illegally, right? So it makes
Like he
him
never should have been here in first place.
right. So it makes him an illegal immigrant from Guatemala. But apparently, the network news on Monday night decided not to include that detail when they reported the story. And folks, you'll have to figure out what their motivation was in not sharing with you that detail Monday night. Um, I just think the media is becoming.
He never should have been here to commit that heinous crime.
Couldn't agree more. Couldn't agree more. Now, here's another story you didn't see on the network news, and I'm sorry to have to share this really disgusting story with you, and it's about a depravity. But what I'm going to share with you is not about the story itself, it's about how the media reported this. So, uh, yesterday, two gay men in Georgia were sentenced for sexually abusing their two young adopted male children. And not only were they sexually abusing their own children, they were pimping them out to other gay men in their community.
Oh.
I mean, literally inviting their gay friends to come over and have sex with their two young children, who at the time were 7 and 9 years old. Um, and the way the authorities found out is these people were sharing uh, pedophilia images on with each other over. Anyway, somehow the FBI figured out they were on one of these websites and they found these guys sharing child porn. So they raided the house, and when they raided the house, they found homemade porn showing them having sex with their own two young children. So it's a disgusting, vile story. But my question is this: they were arrested in 2022 in Georgia. I thought that would have been big news, and the fact that they were sentenced, yesterday, I also thought would have been big news. Now, if you know how to do a Google search,
Yeah.
you can put a time boundary. You can say, "Show me all stories from this date to this date." So I went back and I'm saying, I consider myself pretty well informed. Why didn't I hear about their original
Mhm.
arrest in 2022? And why didn't I hear about this sentencing? Well, I went back to 2022 to search for calendar year 2022, and other than a couple of print stories, um, I couldn't. There was no network video. I found a Fox News, a small Fox News story, but ABC, CBS, NBC, 2022, nothing. The story about their sentencing, nothing. So again, only from the New York Post. So my question is, I would have thought this would have been, given what some of the things that the national media puts on the evening news, like what Donald Trump had for lunch. I would have thought
Yeah.
would have thought this would have been newsworthy both in 2022 and again on Friday when they were sentenced. And I'm shaking my head. Why does the news media choose not to report anything? I mean, it's like a news blackout on this thing. Again,
Between this heinous gay couple who did this horrible thing to their children, Mangione, his crime, and then the people who are calling him a hero and equating him to Jesus and Superman, and the Guatemalan who set that poor woman on fire, and the Saudi who ran into the people in Germany. What is wrong with the world?
yeah, and what role is the media playing? Yeah, there's always been sick people. There's been sick people in this world for centuries, actually for millennia. There's always
Yeah, but
been
the media like feeds it. I feel like they're feeding into this.
they either feed it or
The
shield it.
media is just feeding into this.
Right, and I'll give you one more. We're going to move right on. This is all about perception. So obviously, whenever a police officer kills an unarmed black man, it's always huge national news, right? It's covered
Mhm.
endlessly.
Yeah,
Like, was it
yeah.
George Floyd? Remember, I
They
mean,
always pull out race.
you
Mhm.
pull out race. So, and George Floyd,
Mhm.
you couldn't spit without hitting a George Floyd story. So I'm trying to remember which group, a very
Mhm.
highly rated polling organization polled people. They asked them this question: how many unarmed black men do you believe were killed by police? It was approximately how many black men were killed by police in 2021. And the choices were about 10, about 100, about 1,000, about 10,000, or more than 10,000. So they, so when they asked people who were liberal, um, almost 50% thought it was about 100 a year, and another 25% thought it was about 1,000 a year. So
Oh,
75% of liberals thought that the number of unarmed black men killed by police was between 100 and 1,000. Do you know what the actual number was?
mm.
You want to take a
I'm going to
guess?
say it was about 10. I'm going to say it
El-
was about 10.
11. And of those 11,
Yeah.
by the way, of those 11, there were several where the quote unarmed black man was killed by police when he was trying to run them over with his car. So the way the Washington Post,
Mm.
keeps their data, he was an unarmed black man, but the shooting was completely justified. But where are they getting this perception that the police are killing between 100 and 1,000 unarmed black men per year when the real number, even
Mhm.
including those who tried to run the cops over their cars, was 11? How do you get,
I think they get their information from the same place they get their number of school shootings from.
yeah, I mean, but I'm just shaking my head, except that there's no group that reports this. It's, because the news will take one story like the George
Mhm.
Floyd story and talk about it for months and months and months and months. By the way, have you heard any story where the police
Mhm.
killed an unarmed black
Yep.
man in the last 2 months? Have you heard any?
I haven't heard anything. I'm sure maybe that there may have been one, but I haven't heard it on mainstream media.
No, there hasn't been. Trust me, because if there had been, you'd still be hearing about it today. So
Mhm.
again, this just comes down to the media shaping people's perception. That's the entire focus tonight has been how the
Mhm.
media is influencing people's perception. All right,
Mhm.
kind of rolling towards the end here. I find this disturbing. Uh, they were, remember, I think you heard Nancy Pelosi fell down and broke a hip in Europe last week. Mitch McConnell
Yeah.
continues to fall down. He
Yep.
continued.
Yep.
You know what a transient
Yep.
ischemic attack is? A TIA?
Yeah, it's like a mini stroke.
Like a mini stroke where you just kind of space out, for like 60 seconds.
Yeah.
And like, and Mitch McConnell's been having transient ischemic attacks. And it turns out that there was another Texas congresswoman who hadn't been seen for 6 months. I don't know if you heard this. They finally found her. She was in a long-term Alzheimer's memory care. She was still holding office as a congressperson from Texas, and she's been in a Alzheimer care center for 6 months. Now, she didn't run for re-election, but nobody knew that this woman, who is on paper, she's a congresswoman from Texas. She was still getting her monthly paycheck as a congresswoman, U.S. congresswoman from
Mhm.
Texas. She's been in Alzheimer's long-term care for 6 months now. Hasn't been seen, never showed. She hasn't been to Washington, D.C. in a year, yet she was still, uh, on paper, an active congresswoman from Texas. Well, this led to this story. In 1980, you know what the percentage of members of Congress age 70 and older was?
I'm gonna say like it recently, I would say what, 25%?
That's what it is today. In 1980, it was 4%.
Yeah.
So we've gone from 4% to 25%.
180. Okay, 1980.
Yeah, in 1980 it was
Mhm.
4%. Today it's just 1 point shy of 25%. So folks, we have to stop. Don't remember, we've had some great older people who've been great representatives for us, but folks in the primaries, I think you need to stop voting for people who are
Mhm.
already in their 70s. Uh, I just think
I
it's
mean, there are, there are some, I think you need to look at people individually. I think that people like Biden and some other people, like this woman out of Texas, like how did they go so far without their health being called out by other people? Why are people not questioning their? And who's the guy, the older senator? is it Grassley? I mean, he's up there, but he seems to be in relatively good health, and he's like 90 years old.
Yeah, Grassley's in good shape, but Mitch McConnell, no, Mitch McConnell, I think is 86, and he's falling down. He's having transient
Mhm.
ischemic attacks. Folks, in the primaries, please
I mean,
stop.
I think that there needs to be some sort of comprehensive, like some sort of test, a comprehension test, like like you need to take your driver's license after so many, after 70, you need to take it every 2 years. And these people serving in Congress need to be taking these comprehension tests every couple years.
Unfortunately, due to our Constitution, you can't force it on them. They would have to voluntarily agree to do it. But I think Congress should adopt kind of their own standards today because we have a lot of people in Congress. And
Yeah,
remember, was it Dianne Feinstein last year? I mean, she was literally she died. People there
yeah.
in the roll call, they had to sit next to her. It was her turn to vote. They had to whisper into her ear and say, "Vote yes." I mean, literally, she was spaced out. She had no idea what was going on. But she was a Senator Dianne Feinstein from California, was literally at age 80 plus in severe mental decline. She was still there as a voting member of the Senate, and every vote she made, she only said yes or no because her aide sitting next to her told her what to say, because she was had no clue what was
I
going
mean,
on.
this one out of Texas. I mean, after she was missing from the first one, why didn't somebody question, "Hey, where is she? She missed this vote,"
No, nobody ever
and
did.
hold her accountable?
Nobody ever did. So it's just a shame. All right. Hey, I know we're getting ready to run
I
out.
don't blame them. I blame the people who let this happen.
Right. And by the way, the Wall Street Journal ran a report based upon multiple input from people in the Biden White House, where they said the staff was
Mhm.
completely aware of his severe mental decline and they went to extreme lengths to cover for him. So there was
Mhm.
an organized cover
Yeah.
up of Biden's mental decline. And they had that from multiple
Mhm.
uh, sources from within the Biden White House. But anyway, including, by the way, at least one
Mhm.
Secret Service agent. Um, so
Yeah.
it's just sad. Anyway, that's what I'm saying. And don't get me wrong, I would have preferred Donald Trump is getting up there. Let's hope he makes it through the next 4 years. But I personally would have preferred somebody younger than Donald Trump to be
Mhm.
our 47th president. But we got what we got, and we got to live with it. And let's just hope he stays sharp for the next 4 years. All right. How much time we got left?
Yeah.
How much time we got left?
You got 7 minutes.
All right,
You
real
have about
quick.
7 minutes.
All right, we're going to move on to our taxpayer leave shots. And why do we call them taxpayer leave shot? Well, I'll let the sheriff of Santa Rosa County, Florida, explain it to you. And here we go. Okay.
Somebody's breaking in your house, you're more than welcome to shoot them in Santa Rosa County. We prefer that you do, actually. Hopefully, you'll save the taxpayers money.
And again, as we talked in the past, you want to arrest a thug, give him a court-appointed attorney, send him to jail for 10 years. It's $1 million. Anyway, this one comes to us from Upper Darby, PA, which is it's a suburb just outside of Philadelphia. Ever been to Upper Darby? Pretty,
Yep. Yep.
yep. Here we go. Upper
Philly
Darby,
suburb.
Philly suburb. Here we go.
Much more today about yesterday's deadly shooting in Upper Darby. We told you all about it. A victim fought back, turning the tables on a would-be robber. The victim had a gun and used it, shooting that would-be robber dead in Cobbs Creek Park. Eyewitness News reporter Cleve Bryan is in Upper Darby with some new information on the investigation. Cleve?
That 67-year-old victim is now gone home from the hospital after suffering some chest pains from the incident. Police tell us that he grew up on the Philadelphia side of Cobbs Creek Park, and all he wanted to do yesterday was just go for a walk and get some exercise.
I mean, just a nice guy.
Upper Darby Superintendent Michael Chitwood says in 50 years policing, he's only seen victims turn the tables on their attackers about a half dozen times. But yesterday, that's exactly what happened in Cobbs Creek Park.
Guy pulls what he thought was a real gun on him, demanded his money, and there was a struggle, fight for the gun. And he pulled his gun out and shot the guy.
Police say the robbery suspect who ended up fatally shot in the head is 18-year-old Tyler Williams from West Philadelphia. He had no prior criminal history and was carrying a metal pellet gun that looked like a semi-automatic pistol.
Dealt with the family last night, and obviously that's an 18-year-old son's dead, but they were very cooperative.
Police say Williams' family got a call after the incident from a friend who may have been with the teenager because he described what happened. The victim didn't want to talk to us today, but Chitwood says he feels sad.
He was very, very remorseful and wish it hadn't happened. And, I think myself and other detectives told him, you did nothing wrong.
People in the community agree.
It was self-defense, so I can understand it.
If I was the older guy, I probably did the same thing. Straight up.
We tried to talk to Williams' family. They didn't want to talk to us. We do.
By the way, that I would have done the same thing straight up. That was another older black man, and the young man who was killed was also a black youth. But let me just back this up. So here's a black resident confirming. Here we go. Okay.
I probably did the same thing. Straight up.
We tried to talk to Williams' family. They didn't want to talk to us. We do understand that police are trying to locate that friend that may have been with Williams, but right now they believe that Williams acted alone in the attempted robbery. Live in Upper Darby, I'm Cleve Bryan, CBS 3 Eyewitness News.
Cleve, thank you.
All right. Well, producer Susan, anything you want to add before we wrap up?
Yeah, we talked about a lot of horrible things tonight, but it's Christmas. It's not just Christmas, but it's also Hanukkah tomorrow. Begins the 8 days of Hanukkah tomorrow night.
Actually, it starts tonight,
well,
sundown tonight.
It's Christmas, so
sundown tonight, Hanukkah. So
is it tonight? I thought it was tomorrow.
No. I'm sorry,
Okay.
25th. You're absolutely right. It's sundown on Christmas
I thought
Day.
it was tomorrow. Tomorrow.
You're absolutely correct.
Yep.
So you're correct. So yeah, sundown tomorrow night. Well, good. Well, thank you for correcting me there. Well, anyway, sorry to have to bring you all these sickening stories, but it was more about the media, not about the stories, about the media and how they are selectively covering or filtering what you hear. That's why we call it news and perspective. You won't hear on TV, because some of these stories you didn't hear at all, and other of these stories you only heard a part of the whole story. So as Paul Harvey used to say, now the rest of the story. Anyway, we're running out of time, so I want to thank everybody who listened to this podcast for giving up 30 minutes of your busy day to listen to me ramble on about things I find of interest and importance. And I hope you found them, at least some of them, as interesting and important as I did. And if so, I hope you continue to listen to the podcast in the weeks and months to come. If you want to see some of the materials and story links you heard me talk about today, you can find them on the Jerzee Joe website at jerzeejoe.com, with Jersey being spelled J-E-R, as in Robert, Z as in zebra, E-E, Jerzee, jerzeejoe.com. If you want to send me an email, just send it to joe@jerzeejoe.com. Just remember to spell Jersey with an R, a Z, and two E's. And with that, producer Susan, anything you want to add before we sign off?
Yeah, New Jersey must have
No, I lost you.
internet.
I know.
Yeah, because New Jersey has some fabulous internet.
All right, producer Susan, we're losing the internet. I'll talk to you next week. You have a Merry Christmas. Take care. Bye-bye.